Deadpool and Wolverine was chock full of Easter eggs, but did you catch them all? Let's see. Jon Favreau's Happy Hogan has been a staple of the MCU since the very first Iron Man movie, graduating from Tony Stark's put-upon chauffeur/bodyguard to a trusted member of his boss's inner circle. So it's only fitting that Happy is the first MCU character that Deadpool comes into contact with. So Wade visits Earth 616 to apply for a job with the Avengers. He tells Happy that he needs the job, and we get a somewhat emotional moment as Happy explains that the Avengers don't need to be superheroes. The world needs the Avengers. Lucky for us, during this scene, we get an in-depth glance into Happy's office, and there is a lot to look at. So Happy has like several notable items in his office. For starters, the Captain America shield prototype from Iron Man 2. Yep, Captain America's Star-Spangled Shield, or a very accurate replica of it, holds a prominent place of honor in Happy's office. Now, we don't know too much about this specific shield, but the old Stark Industries logo would indicate that it is from the Howard Stark era. The note saying "triangle outdated" suggests it was right after Cap's triangular shield was punched by Red Skull and he was like, I need a new one. Now, this object in particular was never shown during the first Avenger, and it was also noted that the adamantium alloy gave the shield too much bounce. The project was clearly never finished and shelved after the death of Howard, but has been held onto as like a little token of love. Also, Tony Stark's Iron Man helmet and arc reactor, with the proof that Tony Stark has a heart inscription, was a touching tribute, even though it might be a bit of a continuity issue. Bear with me. So in the very first Iron Man movie, before Pepper and Tony were ever together romantically, she really cared a lot about her boss. When he upgraded his arc reactor, no longer needed the original, he tossed it. He was like, no sentimental value. Well, Pepper was like, no, this was good. She had it mounted on a plaque, proved that Tony Stark has a heart. Look, this Peacemaker on steroids was the only thing keeping Tony Stark alive after his encounter with the Ten Rings, and it really became a symbol of the character's personal growth. Yeah, sure, Iron Man 3 sees the genius billionaire playboy philanthropist remove the arc reactor from his chest, but the tech still remains at the heart of his Iron Man tech, and thus at the heart of his character. Now, this is something that floated across the water as a painfully bittersweet reminder of just how far Tony Stark came on his journey since first becoming Iron Man 11 years earlier. Oh, this floated across the water at his funeral, by the way. But I guess somebody fished it out after that touching moment for Happy to keep in his office. Fun fact, going back to Howard, he was the one who designed the arc reactor. You can see some of its blueprints in Iron Man 2, and thus was able to provide the energy that all of Stark Industries needed to exist. It's a family thing, building the technology to power the future, and apparently it meant quite a lot to director Sean Levy to include the reactor from the first Iron Man movie. Speaking of Pepper, the issue of Forbes magazine with Pepper on the cover is another sneaky little Easter egg that even I didn't catch in theaters. In Iron Man 3, as the newly appointed CEO of Stark Industries, Pepper Potts was featured on the cover of Forbes with the headline, "Pepper Potts stirs up Stark." Gwyneth Paltrow's Pepper Potts was the center of Tony Stark's world, and like a very significant player in his heel turn from cold-blooded CEO to noble hero. After her boss turned husband sacrificed himself at the end of Endgame, Pepper, for understandable reasons, stepped out of the spotlight. But look, the post-Endgame MCU films have referenced her a handful of times, so naturally, Deadpool and Wolverine had to. Finally, in Happy's office, we see a picture of Stark and Peter Parker, which is cleverly covered up by a toy Iron Man mask that once belonged to Peter. So Peter's face was covered by this helmet for like 2 reasons, I think. Also, by the way, the helmet from Iron Man 2. So for starters, Marvel Studios would have had to pay Sony because this would have counted as a Spider-Man appearance for Tom Holland, and we all know how much Disney loves playing nice. Not. Also, if I remember correctly, the spell from No Way Home prevented photos of Peter Parker's face, so nobody would remember him. And in the extended cut, photos of Peter were covered from his school trip, and having the helmet cover his face is just another way to do this. So the spell had a bit of a ripple effect. It hid Peter's image in the past, so that's why when Deadpool travels to 616 for his interview with Happy, we don't see the image. You know, rights issues and the spell. But most of the rights issues. Time to move on to the Void, and there are plenty of discarded objects to be found here. Littered along the wasteland, you find Thor's helmet. And no, it doesn't tell us why Thor was crying. I know for a fact this is another Easter egg that director Sean Levy was super excited to have. As the filmmaker himself put it, there is a super classic old school Thor helmet in the foreground of a Void shot that's from the 70s or 80s, and it feels so rooted in his own youth. Yeah, the Thor helmet that popped up in the Void was as classic as superhero costuming gets, and while I might be wrong, It seemed like that helmet was rocking some legitimately feathery wings, as opposed to the metallic and more rigid looks that Chris Hemsworth, God of Thunder, rocks in the current films. And yeah, we're not going to talk about the 1988 Hulk vs. Thor. Look, after seeing Wolverine in his yellow suit, and now this and Gambit's suit, I'm frothing at the mouth thinking about the future of comic book accurate supersuits and costuming. Modernism be damned. Going back to the topic of S.H.I.E.L.D. from earlier, by the way, some eagle eyes spotted Hydra Captain America shield, which is something that had my eyes popping out of my head. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it was around 2014 to 2016 when Cap was announced as being a Hydra Supreme in the comics, and I remember the amount of hatred coming out of the mouths of fans I knew over that choice. So poking fun at it as a dead variant in Deadpool was really amusing. Speaking of dead, did anybody else spot the Chitauri Leviathan corpse from the Avengers? Or how about the part of the castle of Asgard that was destroyed in Thor Ragnarok? Neat little graveyard we got going on over here. More obvious was a statue of Wanda Maximoff from Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, and the 20th Century Fox logo. Now that was something I was shocked about. I had no idea the folks in the big chairs would let that be a thing. But at the end of the day, Disney does indeed own the copyright now, even though they've rebranded it to 20th Century Television, and they're allowed to do whatever they want with it, even if that means burying it in the desert wasteland. Also, the vehicles in the void might look like they're straight out of Mad Max, but the fleet includes the Red Skull's car from Captain America: The First Avenger, the ice cream truck from Moon Knight, Deadpool's Chimichanga truck, Thanos' Black Order Q-ship, the often used S.H.I.E.L.D. helicarrier, the Guardians of the Galaxy ship, and the Fantastic Four's Fantastic Car. I really like that we got a look at a Fantastic Car, on top of having a Johnny Storm variant in the movie, because it makes folks like myself really optimistic for how the Fantastic Four is going to be used going forward in the MCU. Almost immediately after the titular heroes find themselves in the void, Deadpool's like, this place looks awfully Mad Max-esque, but he cuts himself short, being like, oh, that's gonna be IP infringement if he carried on. If you're unaware, Mad Max is owned by Warner Brothers Entertainment, one of the last of the big five other than Disney, which is a good reminder that Disney doesn't own everything, no matter how hard they try. But that doesn't stop the Merc with a mouth later. When Wolverine gets rid of his brother's head, Sabretooth, Deadpool picks it up and jokingly addresses Pyro's gang as if they were apocalyptic road warriors, and his pal had just killed their beloved Furiosa. Okay, not quite objects, but in the void there were also alien-looking creatures, Narvas from Loki. So these are also known as void turkeys, and they're little flightless bird-like creatures that call the void their home. The Narvas, fun fact, were first pitched by Loki's production designer, Kasra Farahani, leading to the creatures being named after his daughter. Although these creatures were never officially named in the show, Dan DeLeo revealed that they were called void turkeys, which it's just kind of fun. Well, that's all for today, folks. I've been Alexa. See ya!